An explosive report in The Atlantic came out yesterday in which Trump was accused of calling fallen soldiers losers and suckers when trying to get out of visiting a military cemetery in 2018. So this story rings true based on what we know of Trump, but it was broken by Jeffrey Goldberg, who was one of the most prominent Iraq War cheerleaders of the 2000s. Aspects of it were confirmed by the Washington Post and the AP, so that does lend the story credence, but I'm a little bit skeptical in some areas because of, for example, how Goldberg explained why his sources were anonymous on CNN.
The president, in your story, did not want amputees in a military parade because people don't want to see them. I'm curious why these people didn't want to go on the record. We're 2 months from an election, and these are horrible insults to service members. Did they explain their thinking as to why they wouldn't put their names to these accounts?
Well, like you, when you're faced with the same situation, you always ask for people to go on the record.
Sure.
And then ultimately you have to make it when they don't want to go. And we've both experienced why people don't want to go. They don't want to be inundated with angry tweets and all the rest. And we push hard, and that's why you have to sort of do this reporting with even more belt and suspenders approach.
Okay, so anonymous sources in and of themselves should not be a source of skepticism, but Goldberg being the one to break the story should be, and his explanation for it was odd. The Washington Post verification of this story basically reprinted The Atlantic and then added one additional anonymous source to the verification. And these could be rumors that were going around. The Associated Press's verification was a lot more sound, I would say. So I'm not saying I don't believe this story. I'm probably actually erring on the side of believing it more than not believing it. But the fact that so many outlets have just run with it, when Goldberg, everything he writes should be treated with skepticism, that's what bothers me. But this is the AP's verification in addition on top of what was written about in The Atlantic. A new report details multiple instances of President Donald Trump making disparaging remarks about members of the U.S. military who have been captured or killed, including referring to the American war dead at the Ancey-Marne American Cemetery in France, I could have butchered that, in 2018, as losers and suckers. Trump said Thursday that the story is totally false. The allegations were first reported in The Atlantic. A senior Defense Department official with first-hand knowledge of events and a senior U.S. Marine Corps officer who was told about Trump's comments confirmed some of the remarks to the Associated Press, including the 2018 cemetery comments. The defense officials said Trump made the comments as he begged off visiting the cemetery outside Paris during a meeting following his presidential daily briefing on the morning of November 10th, 2018. Staffers from the National Security Council and the Secret Service told Trump that the rainy weather made helicopter travel to the cemetery risky, but they could drive there. Trump responded by saying he didn't want to visit the cemetery because it was filled with losers, the official said, speaking on condition of anonymity because the official was not authorized to discuss it publicly. The White House blamed the canceled visit on poor weather at the time. In another conversation on the trip, The Atlantic said Trump referred to the 1,800 Marines who died in the World War I Battle of Belleau Wood as suckers for getting killed. Is this the exact kind of thing that Trump would say? Absolutely. Do I trust intelligence officials and national security officials? Absolutely not. They have lied to Jeffrey Goldberg before. They lied us into Iraq. He reprinted their lies, and they were considered as fact at the time by major outlets like the Washington Post and the Associated Press. So, again, this is a lot less consequential because this is more of another gossipy story of how vapid Donald Trump is than lying us into Iraq because Saddam Hussein had WMDs when he actually didn't. But it's the same dynamic of the resurrecting and the rehabilitation unnecessarily of the national security and defense establishment just to dunk on Trump. And I hate it. I really hate it. It's a bad dynamic and it sets a bad precedent because even under Obama, the national security establishment was trampling on our rights. And we don't get to pretend they're these heroes when largely the behavior and the lies and the toppling of governments and what we do in the name of democracy under immense secrecy is usually extremely bad and harmful to the world and to people. And so I take it with a massive, massive grain of salt. I think we need to be skeptical about national security sources in general when talking about politics, way more so than we are. And we don't get an exception just because this story reflects badly on Trump. I want to be consistent about this, and I know this isn't going to get me a ton of views, but I think it's important and not discussed enough in politics.